Hello, everyone, and thank you to, welcome to tonight's show. I don't know why I was thanking you for, but thank you for watching here now and in the future. For tonight, we will be talking about a TV show, Heat of the Night, set in 1980s Sparta, Missouri.
Mississippi.
What's the difference?
There's a difference. Don't do that.
Yeah,
He
there's a
doesn't believe in
difference.
France. I mean, come on.
Oh,
You can't
well,
expect him to get his geography right.
I get geography right, I just refuse to accept it. But anywho, so it's set in 1988 Mississippi, but it appears to be the 1950s
It's
Atlanta,
not quite.
Georgia.
It looks so. At latest, it looks like about the 70s because the place is behind the times, and it's mentioned
Well,
quite a
yeah.
few times that the place is behind the times.
So far, as someone, well, I think it's one of your favorite shows, and that, but someone does. You want to kick off because it was your idea.
Yeah, well, I mentioned it, and you guys said you wanted to watch
Yeah.
one episode to see how you liked it, so we could discuss
Oh,
it, and we ended up
dang.
watching 3. What?
What's going on, Jacob?
One of my chickens has a snake.
Chickens are dinosaurs, man.
Yeah.
Frogs are even more fun. You should see him with a frog.
Oh, jeez.
Okay.
So what we did is we got together, and you and Kusri, who I was kind of hoping would make it but didn't. We were planning to only watch one episode. We ended up watching 3 of them. So what we're going to be
Yeah.
discussing.
I was only told about 2. I feel left out now.
No, I said
because
the
the
pilot-
first one, yeah, the pilot's a 2-parter. That's why.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
I was told that we were watching the 2-parter pilot. That was all I was told about.
No, I actually gave you 2 different names.
You said 1 and 2, which is what, if you look
Part
on all
1
the
and 2, and
documentation,
then-
the pilot is listed as episode 1 and 2.
And then
well,
underneath, I gave you the name of the second episode.
yeah,
directly
it was
underneath.
First Girl.
Yeah, that's if you look
Well,
at it.
shoot.
Yeah, part 1 and 2, and First Girl.
I've only watched the pilot then.
I mean, the pilot's long
Yeah.
enough. We could talk about the pilot. Then.
Well, we can discuss First Girl because you and I saw it and we let them weigh in
Yeah.
on it. So we'll go on the pilot first, though. So anyway, we did watch. Our group watched those 3, and we had some confused information for our other panelists. But it opens in Sparta, where the black detective from Philadelphia, Virgil Tibbs, has come back home to Sparta, Mississippi, where he grew up, and this is in the early 80s it was set. Even though it was filmed in 88, it's set in the early 80s, and things in Mississippi are still pretty tense when it comes to the whole issue of black folks and white folks.
Yeah,
And this show was not shy about being telling the truth about that on both sides of the issue.
oh yeah,
Yeah, the mayor has like no civil rights
Yeah,
that background and therefore can't get elected to the Senate.
Yeah,
So
and then
therefore he
you
brings
have
in a black detective.
you have that other politician literally arguing with him that it's going to destroy his career.
But
because-
honestly, I know it's skimmed to the end of the episode. But what I did love was just like of him decorating his office, and he's like putting up a big frame picture of Martin Luther King. He's like, "You can't do that,
That's
right?
great.
Why?" Turns
And I
around,
loved his defense when they were talking about General Lee. He's like, that man here came with the office.
I love those.
You know-
I love those actors.
And the funny thing is, I never get the impression he's the one person I never get the impression is racist at all. He just doesn't want to rock the boat.
Yeah, the chief
Like,
knows
Keeping a
everybody
balance
in
is how
town.
he
Yeah.
keeps things peaceful.
In
Yeah.
the episode First Girl,
Yeah.
there's a statement he makes because he's been here and he's been the sheriff for so long. He said, Virgil, if I were to go out and tell the world everything I know about the folks in this here town, he's like, I could be a millionaire with all the information I have. He's like, and this town would become a flaming war zone or something to that effect. I can't remember the exact line, but it's because he knew everybody. Kids, adults, he knew what they did. And it's one of the big things in the pilot episode is the fact that he knows all the ones who were
Everything.
involved in the crime being perpetrated since they were babies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he keeps everybody's
Yeah.
secrets. Like
Mhm.
unless they, unless it's harming someone.
Yep.
Like he doesn't rock the boat, and he keeps the peace by keeping people's secrets for them.
And one of
What
the
is-
big go ahead.
No. Yeah, so one of the things that I liked about him was he's like, people were talking about like an African American man in a suit breaking the house. Why are you wearing a suit? Like, just put on a uniform.
Well, he's like, when somebody made a call about a black man trying to break into somebody's house and they said he was wearing a suit, I knew it had to be you.
But if you notice, he's the only person out of all the ranks, because there are some high-ranked officers there. There's a sergeant, there's a lieutenant. If you look at the shoulders, and you turn around and it's like none of them are wearing a suit, Virgil.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, detectives don't wear uniforms though, and he's the only detective on the force.
And that's the issue they keep running into, is he stands out a lot because he is their only detective.
Well,
because when the mayor brings it to him, he's like, "You informed me that he is our chief of detectives, of which we haven't any."
So it's like, what's he the chief of?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, he says we're going to, but like
they never
already
do.
have, for a town that size, they already have an enormous police force.
And considering how bad the crime gets, sometimes it seems like they still don't really have enough.
Okay, so I thought, because my country has what they call integrated police police stations, I thought it was like that police station was maybe like Sparta and just like Athens and Memphis. That's what I was thinking.
No, that was a county operation.
No.
Yeah. That was a big operation. Someone's doing meth.
Well, Sparta's also kind of spread out, you might have noticed. So there's a lot of ground to cover, even though the population isn't that high.
Yeah, see, here it wouldn't matter. Let's see. The last job I had was an outreach person, and I covered a territory that if I had to run from end to end, it took me, if traffic was really good, it took me 3.5 hours to go from end to end.
Yeah, that
follows. If I got caught on the bridge, it took me 5.
Ooh,
and the police force, there were 3 police forces, and one had 3 people, one had 5, and one was supposed to have 9, but they were understaffed, so they only had 5.
Yeah,
and actually, and the one that was supposed to have 9 was the county sheriff's department. They were supposed to cover everything those other 2.
Oh, and that's the one that's understaffed. It figures.
Yeah.
But basically, the problem they run into early on is the chief got into it with this guy, Lapierre, because Lapierre's son is an idiot who thinks he can break the law because his daddy's rich and he's one of the most influential men in Sparta.
Well, I mean, as we find out, he's really breaking the law because he's trying to get daddy's attention. But
and in a sense, he's also trying to ruin the name that he's been harped on about his entire life.
Which the logic for it at the end is fucking hilarious. It's like the son goes from being a bad guy to just plain creepy.
Considering he was doing it initially against their will, and then he was using it as blackmail when they found out.
Yeah. Okay, but you were saying...
Yeah, it's fine. But he gets into it with this guy Lapierre because for crying out loud, the episode opens with Lapierre's dumbass kid and his friends driving drunk in the middle of the night, speeding around. They see the chief and then deliberately go speeding past him just because he thinks he can. It's like, this first act in the episode is to speed past the chief of fucking police.
But one of my favorite things and I mentioned it to Fire because I thought it was hilarious, was the morgue scene. Where it's like, I needed to have a look at like the pubic area, and it's like, you what? I needed, and then he was like, oh yeah, I need to look for like semen for any like tears, any in the rectum.
Yeah, the dude looks horrified.
Yeah,
and it was one thing I had to actually explain it to you a little bit because
hey man,
it was a 2-part issue. It was the way he was saying it was really crude in this guy's opinion, and also in that part of the country, it wasn't seen as proper for a black man to come in there and be saying all these things about a white woman. And Virgil brings that up to the chief when the chief argues with him about it. And Chief's like, yeah, but that's just kind of how he's like, that's the way it is here. And he's like, but it can't stay that way.
Which
What's
is
really
true.
bizarre is why did he have to explain to the guy how to do a rape kit?
So
Well,
I
go ahead. I'll let you first.
I think that it's because he was they explained that the crime scene photographer is also the county photographer. That multiple people have multiple jobs in this town, and I think that it might have been one the guy was overly religious, right? Then number two, I think that it's like small town TV mindset where it's like, oh God, you said that to me.
For what I can see, the issue didn't seem to be that he didn't know how to do it. It was more that Virgil was kind of stepping on his toes because he hadn't done it yet. And he was pretty offended at Virgil's language. As dumb as that is, he was offended at Virgil's language and the fact that he was telling him his job.
Well, that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that I get where Tibbs is coming from throughout this show, but he also does, like, the chief of police walks into his office, he finds out he's got this new officer. He basically says, okay, I get that, you probably know that I didn't know anything about this, but, we're going to try and do the best we can. And then Tibbs kind of gets all up in his face about it.
And it's because
he tries to be decent about it, and Tibbs is kind of a jerk.
Well, his wife explains, unfortunately, later, but his wife explains a few different times that them coming back here kind of stirred him up. And the problem is that Virgil is bullheaded and very quick to fire on emotions. It's kind of a big character
but that's
flaw
what I'm
with
getting
him.
at, is that I think with the Morgue guy, I think, yes, I don't think it's just that, he needs to get used to, having a black detective around. I think he was intentionally going in there to pick a fight.
Hey, Brad.
I think, from what I remember, he was so aggravated by the fact that the case hadn't moved forward yet. He went in there with a chip on his shoulder.
But the case wasn't that old at that point.
So
I mean, he was mad about Willie.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's why I'm saying I think he went in there to pick a fight because he was upset about the fact that they'd pulled in a black kid, which is just as much of a problem as them pulling him in because he was a black kid.
Yeah, and then of course he went ballistic on Bubba because nobody was in the office and they just walked in and got the kid.
Well, that was also a problem, though. I mean,
yes, it was absolutely a problem. And unfortunately, Bubba got
something I just want to point out about. I thought the chief was going to go just talk to the kid, but then I realized he's actually bringing him in for his own safety.
Yeah, he was trying to protect him, and he tries to explain that to Virgil later. Yeah, but unfortunately, somebody set up Bubba, and they got him anyway.
Yeah, I think that in the whole first episode, Favre did say that Virgil was basically like, I don't want to be here. I'm only here because of the money, because of the contract.
Well, he wanted to be home, but being a cop in Sparta turned out to be a lot more than he figured initially.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he asked for a contract. He's got to know some of what he's getting into.
I just don't think after as long as he was in Philadelphia, I don't feel like he was ready for it.
No. But at the same time, when it started off, they made everyone kind of look bad, right? Kind of like, oh, this is suspicious. Like, what's he up to? Because if you remember, the chief turned around and said, contract. Like, you're like, oh, what, the game? Because the way, if you didn't watch it, like, I haven't seen the prequel movie, you'd kind of think for a second, you're like, oh, wait, it's because he contracted in a black man. But then you're like,
well,
no.
initially the chief was trying to kind of convince him without convincing him that he didn't really want the job. He didn't because he didn't realize what they'd offered him.
Oh yeah, and that's what I think when he said contract. Like you're like, hold the fuck on, you got a contract?
Exactly.
Where's my contract? That's what I was thinking. But yeah,
don't those towns usually vote in the sheriff?
Yeah, but not the detective.
Not the detective.
Yeah. No. I know that, but like
he wasn't elected.
He acted like he was offended that the detective had a contract, but he's voted in, so
I just think he wasn't offended. He just kept getting aggravated at all this shit that'd been done behind his back.
Yeah. It's like,
and that I think too that's where Tibbs really started to get kind of dickish about it too.
Yeah, a little bit.
He got real arrogant there, like that little smirk he's wearing.
Yeah. Virgil starts out pretty rough in the series.
He does, and
it's like he's got a massive chip on his shoulder. He's too emotional.
Yeah, compared to later on, it's But this is going to give you a laugh. This is basically throughout the pilot episode, the Chief's face.
Basically, most of the time, yeah.
Oh my god. Oh, so I looked up the dating issue. You're both right. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
The cast did not know when it was set. So some of the other actors were like, "Oh, we're going to act like it's the 60s." Right? And the other actors are like, "No, we're acting like it's the 80s," like mentality wise.
Yeah.
And they're because they simply described the movie as happening a while ago. So they're like, is it 67 or 88 or 7? Like, some of the cast genuinely did not know what year they were in.
It's easy to tell the year it was meant to be in. Yeah, exactly, Eastland. Exactly. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Gillespie's just sick of the politics because that's 9 times out of 10 throughout the show, the politics is what ends up stabbing him in the back.
Gillespie comes off as I said this to Favre, he is a begrudging old cop who's just riding the desk until he can get retirement.
He doesn't want to retire. If you ever hear him talk to his doctor, he tells him he'll retire when the doctor does. It's just that he gets so tired. In fact, a lot of times you'll hear him say, he's like, I get so tired of shit changing for the worse.
Yeah, but Brad, that it's not wonky way to run things. It is, but at the same time, when there's a sequel to something so far apart, a lot of them don't know when things are set. When like different things are set.
The other issue is if you're looking at the pilot episode, the 2-part pilot, there's a world of difference between the pilot episode and later episodes.
Oh yeah, the quality, the acting, the tone,
the direction.
All I can think of is like Dark City, which was intentionally like given technology from all sorts of different times so that it would remain timeless. You can never tell what time it's actually set in, just so that it would remain timeless forever.
Or like Gotham 1950.
What ends up happening though is you have this conflict going on between the chief. Bubba gets set up so the guy they brought in initially, who was brought in under the pretense that the girl who was murdered was something he did, and he has an alibi, but the problem is there's nobody there to be witness because he was guarding the construction equipment out on the site. He's a night watch.
Yes,
that is the exact opposite of an alibi.
Yeah, I mean, he had if anybody would have backed him up, but nobody thought to contact the shift manager or any shit like that, you know.
Oh yeah.
And the fact of the matter is they could have contacted the shift manager, but without him being there with eyes on the kid, it still only holds so much water if they know if he was there or not. Mm-hmm. So they had a bad situation, which unfortunately the kid was innocent, but he was being set up because the father, Lapierre, didn't like him. And he knew he was really responsible.
And because he was apparently perfectly willing to murder anyone in order to get his kid off.
Yep.
I mean, there's a creepy dude right there.
Yeah. Lapierre's son was a shitbag, and Lapierre himself was just a manipulative fucking asshole.
I think Lapierre was worse. I mean, the son is creepy and, you know, into porn and all sorts of things, but Dad is blatantly willing to like order hits just at the drop of a hat.
As his son pointed out to his father before they arrested him, he's like, all you ever cared about was the family name. He's like, that's the only reason you did anything.
Yeah, but most people, when they're trying to protect the family name, do not immediately jump to murder.
Oh, sure.
Like, try other things first.
But it comes from that narcissism, you know? He's above everyone as far as he's concerned. And it's the way
actually, you know who was truly creepy was the guy who actually did the killing. The way he's giggling when he's in the truck.
Oh, you mean Red Jack?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that dude was messed up. And the fact that he was willing to get into a shootout in broad daylight with a cop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he's just giggling maniacally the whole time.
I have to ask a question. Are the people in these small towns not intelligent? Because like they tried to drive Virgil off a bridge.
They thought Lapeer was going to protect him.
Yeah.
So they thought they had an ironclad freaking like get out of jail free card, basically. Which is what he had basically told them too. Just get this done and I'll look out for you kind of shit.
Yeah.
Not that he was ever probably going to honor it, but that's pretty much what he had told him. Get this done and I'll protect you.
Yeah.
I don't know. He might have honored it because he might want him for dirty work later.
Yeah, he might. At least I don't know about the other guy, but Red Jack, he might have actually tried to retain that way.
Oh yeah.
But anyway,
I think he really just plain old liked doing dirty work too.
Probably,
He was just a weird, giggly, creepy guy.
But sometimes dirty work is more fun. Hey, Bubba!
You have an issue too. You had an issue there too, because the issue is that, and it's well done, because they really do try to set it up initially to make it look like Bubba's involved.
Damn it, Bubba! What the fuck have you been getting yourself up to?
Yeah, if you remember when they're arguing, you know, they had that big argument where Bubba was supposed to be in the station when they came and got Willie. And then they had that scene later after Virgil gets beat up. Bubba finds him. Initially, they have him get out, giving Virgil this really dirty look, and then he draws his gun before the cutaway.
Oh, see, I didn't think he was involved. I thought he just separately might be going, man, my life might be easier. Maybe my life would be easier if I just walked away right now.
I genuinely thought that,
you know, because it's pretty clear that he's supposed to be pretty racist. And, you know, the fact that he gets by that to do what he needs to do as a police officer, I thought, you know, I think sometimes, especially in the, you know, the current day and age, you know, we hear racist and like that becomes someone's like be all end all.
Yeah. And what you find out about...
We forget that people have nuances.
Yeah. Well, what you find out later on about Bubba is Bubba's just old-fashioned, kind of like the chief. It wasn't even a racist thing. If he thought somebody knew something, he was willing to smack them until they actually gave it up. It didn't matter what color they were.
So kick-ass, take names type thing.
Yes, Bubba
was very well acted.
Another guy who doesn't get a lot of credit is the guy that plays Parker, David Hart. Because especially as the show goes on, Parker ends up actually getting quite a lot of development as a character. I don't know if you remember which one that is.
Which one is that?
Parker's the guy he's a little heavier. He's starting to go bald.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
He's the one that's always talking to the chief like about random shit or answering the phones.
Oh,
He was the one when the girl got shot was trying to figure out how to resuscitate her.
Ah. Yes. I know the guy.
But the pilot goes on from there. You know, you have the whole thing with Lapeer, and you find out that the murder happened literally because the son's not much better than his daddy, because he was filming pornographic stuff with his friends without most of them knowing about it.
Yeah.
And then when they found out and tried to do something about it, he threatened them with blackmail that he was going to take all of it and show it to their parents and their families to keep them quiet.
Mm-hmm.
So he was just as manipulative as his father. He just wasn't as good at it.
Oh yeah.
I was actually kind of impressed because there is so much of like an all, not to quote Cinema Sins, but I'm going to quote Cinema Sins, all bad guys are rapists. And it was kind of interesting to have that like little bit of a different spin.
Yeah.
That's not what he was really doing.
No, because it was all
I was
consensual.
so set and already rolling my eyes that like, okay, this is going to be how it went down.
Nope, and he was just a manipulative asshole. He wasn't raping anybody.
Yeah, he was just a little shit. I mean,
and to be fair, Eastland, Parker's issue is he doesn't always pick up on things right away, but he's actually a pretty smart dude. The longer the show goes on, the more you see that.
Yeah.
The problem with Parker is he tends to wear his heart on his sleeve, and he gets himself into a lot of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's another one later in the show where Parker falls in love with this girl, and it turns out that she's a problem. And he and Bubba seem to have that problem a lot as the show goes on.
Okay. Yeah, like, I'll be looking forward to, like, actually getting more into it. As, like, we do go on. Because, like, I do like the cast. And, like, the dynamic between Virgil and the Cap and like the police chief, I do really like it.
The one I'm planning to have you watch next is another 2-part. It's called Don't Look Back. You'll like how that one turns out because it really does lean into that dynamic, not just between Virgil and the chief, but between Virgil, the chief, Parker, and Bubba.
Okay.
Because there's another murder that is basically a mirror of a murder that happened, I think, like 20 some odd years ago.
Okay,
and
so
it digs up quite a few things.
So by the sounds of it, it was a copycat killer then.
Pretty much, yeah. But there's a reason behind it, which is what becomes the problem. Yeah.
Do you want to hear something stupid?
What?
From real life? When I was little and I first heard the term cat burglar, I genuinely used to think it was the cat robbing things.
Wow. And yeah, Gillespie and Virgil definitely become allies and friends.
Oh, yeah.
He just didn't even know how to respond to that. He's just like moving on.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what to say about that. But the I want to say beyond the pilot, the biggest rough spot they have in the show between Gillespie and Virgil anyway is when that second murder happens, which is why I'm going to have you watch that one next. Because it pretty much sets them against each other almost like they were the first time again, at least for a while.
And what season will that be in?
Well, so I'll explain something to anybody who's interested in the show before we move on. There's an issue with this show. And the issue is that it got canceled and then restarted and then canceled. Then it got picked up by another network. So the problem is the licensing for the show was all over the damn place. It took me a month to get the discs together that I have.
Thank you.
And I had to go skimming all over the internet to find them. As far as I can tell, and these are still rare, the only way to get this series on disc is to get there's a box set called the Television Marathon, which is 8 DVDs worth of the show.
It's not like one of those midnight infomercial types.
No, I found it on eBay. I had to look it up because these are not available anymore. You have to get them secondhand.
Yeah.
So I have season 1 in a box. I have season 4 in a box, and then I have selected episodes, which were basically selected as the best episodes of the seasons from seasons 1 through 4 in this other set. It is, as near as I can tell, fucking impossible to get the whole series because some of it never got released on disc. So you kind of have to cherry pick what you can get.
Yeah.
That is one issue with picking up the show now is you kind of have to grab what you can get of it because of the issue with the availability.
Apparently, it's on Prime Video in America.
I don't have Prime Video, so I'm not sure. I wouldn't be able to check.
Me neither. Jacob, do you have Prime Video?
No, I don't.
Cheapskate.
Physical media.
Yeah,
What?
I prefer physical media myself, which is why I have
Physical
this.
media. Own your shit.
Okay, well, what I was gonna say is, like, getting back to the pilot episode.
Yeah,
you have all this conflict, and it comes down to it that they do figure out, because they finally are able to get a warrant to search this stupid kid's house after they finally get the one girl who's the good girl in the group to admit what actually happened and not the cover story that they all put together for the cops.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. So they finally get her to tell the truth, and they search, and they're digging around. They find that he's got one of his closets is hiding the entrance to the basement, which is where he's got his little movie studio at. So then it's where they get the evidence.
So
in the meantime, Red Jack, who we were talking about earlier, who's the one that killed the kid, goes after Virgil to try to kill him and get the evidence for Lapierre so they can't use it against his son.
Yeah.
But Gillespie figures out what's going on. They catch up and end up arresting these two idiots and getting Virgil out of that. And they finally grab the kid, and they go to see fucking Lapierre, because now Lapierre is implicated for not only, ordering the murder of the guy who got wrongly accused, but covering up all this shit his son's doing. Well, it turns out, as a final little crown to the whole stupid thing, that Lapierre only knew that his son was responsible for killing the girl. Lapierre didn't know his son was running a porn studio. And so when he found out about that, then he got pissy about it. Because it wasn't okay.
Yeah,
it wasn't okay
it's real
for his son to be
hysterical to
making
think.
porn.
It's real hysterical to think, like, oh, you murdered a girl? Sure, I'll help you hide a body, no problem. What do you mean you're doing porn?
Exactly.
Now I'm pissed off.
Because it came down to the whole thing that he felt like them finding out his son was making porn would make the family look bad. It came back to him only caring about the family name. And his son's like, that's part of why I did it.
Well, you'd think going to jail for murder would also make the family look bad.
Apparently you didn't think so.
Yeah.
Well, because he was so used to using his position and his money to just make things go away.
Yeah, and if they turn around and they do listen and you look at it, he's there and he's like, oh yeah, but Dad, the Lapierre name is known in every porn studio, every
Yeah, he did make that statement.
And his father's like, I fucking hate you. Just take me to jail.
No, that was what the son said.
No, the son said it to him.
Yeah, he's like, you take me to jail and just get me the hell away from him.
Now the name's going to be known nationwide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he went to go throttle his son, and Gillespie grabbed him and like, all right, now it's too late for that.
And in that day in 1988, the porn industry collapsed.
So go ahead.
Your important, thing to learn, if you hang out with like a bad group of people and you do something wrong and there's one really nice person in the group, always remember they're the one that's going to crack and they got to go.
You're the snitch.
Yeah, the funny thing is that girl actually does show up again later in the series. They were pretty consistent with side characters kind of popping up here and there again.
So they basically
if you're gonna have a small town, you're gonna have to.
Yeah, because there ends up being another episode involving her getting involved in some other shit that she wasn't aware of and didn't find out till later. She's got really bad luck.
I mean, you can't say we live in a small southern town and then,
yeah,
over the course of the series have 10,000 people, like 10,000 extras roll through.
And it's
so
funny.
That's actually
Go ahead.
There's a weird issue talking about small towns with a show over here called Emmerdale. People are laughing at it, right? Because it's been going on for years. It's a small little village. There's not enough houses for the cast.
Oh shit. Well, that would admittedly be a bit of a problem.
Like, literally, you see Cass is like, come on, I'm heading home. You've never seen their house. They just walk off. So there's a joke about things like that over this way. They say, oh, where do they live? In the bushes.
Now, we will briefly discuss the other episode, which unfortunately you guys didn't see, but
half of us missed.
Yeah. The other episode we watched was called First Girl. And it starts out amusingly because it kind of highlights Parker in the beginning of this one. So the chief is being hounded by Harriet DeLong, who's one of the city council members. She's this, I want to say
Mayor?
she's late 40s, 50s. She's one of the city councilors. I want to say late 40s, early 50s, black woman. And they're talking to the chief because they're trying to kind of do more of the thing where they're bringing in more officers of other races. But they're getting on his case because there's a murder. And the body gets dumped in this area, in this kind of area of like the, kind of like the slums almost, called the bottom.
Yeah.
And the body dumped there. And the body is laying there in the road for an hour before anybody calls the cops.
Yeah, and when they're there, he's like, "Did anyone see it?" And it takes like a good bit of the episode to basically realize or to get one of the women who was actually saw what happened to actually
and the thing is, she still wouldn't do it in the neighborhood. She waited till they found her at work before she would say anything.
Because she wouldn't say it in the bottoms, and
the
way that they acted. Like all the people who lived in the bottoms, the way that they acted around it was, it's like they wanted to say something, but they were scared of someone. Does that come up later on?
The issue is they don't trust the police because there was still a lot of the issues of racism on both sides in that period of time in the South.
Yeah.
So some of them might have wanted to talk, but they didn't trust the cops and they didn't want it to come back on them either. Because other people in the neighborhood might not take it well if they start talking to the cops for what they assume to be not a reason that wasn't worth it. Don't rat out your neighbors kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. But I must say that the acting in this does seem that the cast have relaxed.
Yeah, by the time of this one, because this happened a little bit later. So basically what happens, Parker's told to go pick up this new officer while the chief's dealing with the city council, complaining about the crime rate in the bottoms. Well, Parker wasn't, he was just told to pick up an officer named Chris Rankin.
They did that to him on purpose.
Yes, Lonnie did that on purpose. So they tell him, Chris Rankin turns out to be a woman, and nobody bothered to tell Parker this. So when this black girl gets off the bus and she's standing there, he goes over there to talk to her, see if she saw another guy get off the bus. And she's like, nope, it's just me. And she's finding this entirely too amusing herself because he mentions Chris Rankin and she's like, yeah, that'd be me. And he stops, he's like, you're Chris Rankin?
She's like, yeah, I'm Chris.
And she's just grinning her ass off. And he goes and gets her in the car, and then Lonnie drives up. He's like, oh, you guys are real funny. He's like, that's great. He's like, you sent me to come and pick up Chris Rankin, except nobody bothers to tell me that Chris Rankin is a girl.
And now she's black.
So he got Parker out there looking like an ass, and then she's over there laughing about it.
Yeah, and she turns around to him and is like, do you want me to drive?
Yeah, she's like, you want me to drive the car?
One thing I have to ask, was bulletproof vests for cops not a thing back then?
Not really. Not especially in a small town.
No, not yet.
Wow.
So the issue comes in that the guy had been murdered because he was actually part of a small drug running ring.
Yeah.
And they didn't realize that yet, but he'd been gunned down by this other guy who was a member of it, who had at the time it was a 9mm Uzi, which was kind of a big deal to just have.
Yeah.
Especially in a small town. So he guns this guy down, they throw him in a van, they dump him in the bottoms, and they fuck off.
Thank you, Eclectic.
Yes,
appreciated. Isn't a 9mm Uzi, isn't that pretty rare?
They were rarer at the time. They're not They're not as rare now, depending on where you go. You can get them. But the issue was, it's a weapon from Israel. It wasn't exactly something you'd expect somebody in Mississippi to just have.
Yeah, but if you also remember kind of at the time, TV basically had every bad guy has an Uzi.
That's also true. The Uzi was really prevalent in 80s TV. But they get the girl back there, and everybody's making kind of a big deal because the problem is this is the sweetest woman you ever met.
Oh, she's absolute fucking sweetheart. She's bubble of
friendly. She's smart. She's all about her job, and she's trying to help everybody, and everybody's super friendly with her. And she's all about this job. And she mentions that she was raised by her aunt, who lives the next town over, and she's been planning.
She has a devastating backstory. It's like, oh, I'm only my aunt. It's only me. My mother wasn't there.
And so she's like, I make a family wherever I go. She's like, I did it in the academy. She's like, and now I have y'all.
Yeah, and we turned around, and as soon as she said that, we started making jokes that she was one day away from retirement. That was even before.
Yeah, you guys didn't even know.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious.
But she's into the job. She's very clever. She's actually talking with Virgil while they're looking at the body about it looking like a gangland killing in a small town. Well, they realize they start getting to where they're realizing who's responsible for this, and it's the brother of this guy who runs this little local motel.
Mm-hmm.
So they're handling this investigation, and the chief's like, okay, so I want to set this up. He's like, because I don't like my men having to go after people inside a building or have to get involved in a high-speed chase or something. And there were not that many female officers at this time, especially not in these summer towns. So he's like, we're going to draw them out so that you can get them as they're coming out. And this girl, being as into the job as she is, she's like, well, can I go? And there's hesitation from Bubba and Virgil, who are kind of trying to play it off. Like, oh yeah, we got other guys we'll call in. This kind of thing. And, her being a little bit stubborn, she looks at the chief and she's like, well, can I go?
Which... yeah, I guess she was trying to prove herself, but at the end of the day, they really should have turned around and said, you're an inexperienced officer.
Well, the chief's solution was to have her go with Virgil and run the radio in his car so they could coordinate the guys who were doing the actual raid.
Yes.
Which, okay, fine, that makes sense. She's getting the field experience, but she's not out there right in the middle of everything. So she goes along, she runs the radio so they can coordinate. And the guy comes out. But the problem is, the minute he realizes they're there, he comes out shooting. So he gets into a shootout with Parker, Bubba, Lonnie, and Virgil. And he's running his ass off. He's forcing them into cover because he's got a full auto. He gets to his car. She tries to fire a warning shot because at this point, he's about to get away.
Yes.
So she tries to fire a warning shot. He turns, she hits him in the leg, and then he puts like 10 in her chest.
Oh yeah,
like at close range.
He like sprays her, like basically obliterates her heart by the look of it. Like, and she's gone.
They catch up. They're trying to shoot his car. He gets the fuck away. They catch up. Parker's trying to figure out how to resuscitate her. Obviously, they can't at that point.
Hmm.
And then, of course, because they just had an officer down and she's the brand new girl, the city council has to have a hearing about this.
Which he chooses to have in the park.
Well, no, that's later.
Yeah.
What happens is they come to the office and they're like, we have to have a hearing. The department's got to come under investigation. And they come up and they're like, well, while the investigation is going on, we're going to have to ask the chief to be suspended. And Gillespie's like, I don't agree with suspension. He's like, suspension meaning I can't do my job means that I may as well not have a job.
Yes.
He's like, so what I think I'm going to do, he's like, I'm going to leave Virgil, who already has the rank of captain, in charge of my operations here. He's like, I'm going to promote Sergeant Skinner here to the rank of lieutenant, which Bubba tries to tell him he doesn't want, and he makes him take it anyway. And then the chief goes and he packs his stuff and he leaves. Well, what they don't know is the chief is taking this very personally because now he holds himself responsible for her death. So he goes and visits her grave, offers a little prayer, and then goes and finds his old army buddy who happens to know somebody who was involved in this, because it turns out the guy didn't actually leave Sparta after he got shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, Eastland. He went into hiding. Well, he went into hiding with this guy's sister because she had some basic medical training. Well, Chief's army buddy tracks this guy down. They get him to tell him where they went. And the chief then proceeds to go there by himself, track the dude down. He tries to arrest him. Dude jumps up with the Uzi, and the chief puts a few Magnum rounds in him.
Which, for a man of his age, they stayed away from the stereotype of, oh, he's like, compared to the younger cops, you don't know why he's doing it.
Yeah, there's a number of times the chief doesn't draw his gun often, but when he has to, he tends to use it.
Yeah, which is why you do when you draw a gun, fire.
Mm-hmm. But it's not like he doesn't always, he rarely engages in that kind of thing. But when he does, he's there with intent. He wants it to end. He wants it to stop. And in fact, when his buddy tries to tell him, he's like, look, he's like, you were not John Wayne back when we were younger. He's like, let me come along with the shotgun or something. He's like, no. He's like, well, then why don't you call some of the officers and have them meet you there? And Gillespie's statement was like, this man is not going to get another chance to kill any more of my officers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's more than likely to kill you. And Gillespie's like, well, that's what he's going to have to do before he kills another one of my cops.
Yeah, he's like, he is a good leader. But what I remember most from that episode, because it was started getting late for me, but because that's what happens, folks, when you live in the future. But the end meeting, he really turned around and was really forcing for a black female officer to replace her.
Yeah, so I'll explain what happened there.
Yeah.
When they meet later, there's a time cutaway. When they meet later, the chief's reinstated and they're discussing the terms for another officer to be hired. And they come up and they was like, so I have your statement here. Because initially there were members of the council who were like, well, they feel like you might not have been as eager to let her go and do that if it were a white woman. And the chief basically dismisses that.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, but in regards to this statement, he's like, you've authorized me to hire another officer who will be black and male. He's like, male. And he stopped. He's like, why? And Harriet DeLong is like, well, we don't feel that the people are ready to see another female officer get shot or another young black girl, etc. And he's like, to tell me that I can't hire another girl seems like you're telling me that I shouldn't have hired one in the first place. He's like, and I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
And he's like, I want another girl. And then he kind of motions to Virgil off screen. He's like, and I got one. And Virgil shows up with this other girl who actually ends up being a permanent cast member and actually ends up being a really good character later in the show herself. Yeah, exactly, Eastland. And he had Virgil actually go and get them another one before the council meeting even took place.
Yeah. But yeah, after he got her, Fire says she's gonna become
yeah, Luann Corbin ends up becoming a major character later on.
Yeah. But I'm enjoying this show, honestly. Fears of racial conflict.
Yeah, something like that. And there's another episode later dealing with cover. I say that they talk about the issues on both sides. There's another episode later on where the black patrolman Sweet.
Yes,
there's
one dude.
Yeah, there's one dealing with him later where he had a friend he used to play football with, right?
Hey, stranger.
Hey, Phil. But his friend basically after they left Sparta and Sweet came back and joined the cops, his friend had gotten into a bunch of trouble. So the first part of the episode happens is Sweet ends up pulling over this car after a robbery, and it's this old friend of his from when they used to play football. When he arrests the guy starts to panic about getting picked up by the sheriff where he got arrested before. And at one point he tells Sweet, "You should have just shot me."
Why?
Well, what it turns out is that the guy that runs that, it's a smaller department, sheriff's department in a town over. And it turns out he's kind of the guy that a lot of people suspected the chief was. He's very old-fashioned in all the wrong ways.
Oh.
And the guy ran because the sheriff had basically been beating the piss out of him the whole time he was there. And so when the sheriff, who's a friend of Gillespie's, who doesn't know what the fuck's going on in his friend's department, comes to pick the guy up, the guy goes nuts and tries to run, and they have to drag him off, which gets Virgil suspicious of how the guy's acting. So they're trying to get an investigation together, look into it. Well, there's a cutaway where the chief is at this diner that he goes to, and Bubba comes in, talking real quiet, and informs the chief that the morning after they handed that guy back off to the other sheriff's department, he died at the station.
Wonder why?
Well, that becomes a question. Sweet is not real happy about it since he's the one that arrested his friend. When the family gets involved, the guy's sister at first is like, "Look, don't blame yourself. You only arrested him. You did what you had to do." But then when it turns out he gets killed, she becomes super emotional and turns on that and blames him for her brother's death because she's grieving and she's fucked up, which gets, Sweet feeling pretty shitty about himself.
Yeah.
When the investigation's taking too long, Sweet decides that he needs to go and investigate himself. So he goes down to this county posing as basically as a belligerent drunk and gets himself arrested. Which turns out to be both a good and bad idea.
Yeah.
So when Sweet comes up missing, doesn't report him for work, initially the chief assumes he was just bent out of shape because he got into a big argument with them about the investigation taking too long. But when Virgil stops and thinks about it and kind of backtracks what he knew Sweet was doing, he's like, "I think I know what he might have done." He's like, "I think he might have gone to go try to solve this himself." And Gillespie's like, "Oh no." It's like, if he goes over there and causes trouble, he's not going to have a good day. He's like, "No." He's like, "But Sweet's a good cop. I don't think he's going to go down there and cause trouble. I think he's going to go down there and try to get evidence." And Gillespie's like, "Well, how is he going to do that?" He's like, "Those deputies aren't going to talk to him." He's like, "Well, get himself arrested." And when Gillespie thinks about that, they go down there and he got to get into it with this guy. And he'd already had to go down there once when the charge came up and let him know that he was going to be under investigation. And his friend didn't take it well. He basically kind of took it like Gillespie was personally turning his back on him. And when they finally go in to talk to this guy, they force their way back there and they find out that, yeah, Sweet's back there, and they beat the fuck out of him. Like he's unconscious on the bed, beat the fuck. And Gillespie
got his evidence.
Gillespie obviously does not take this way well. He has Bubba and one of the deputies from his department go and get him to a car so they can get him to the hospital. Goes back there to confront his friend, and his friend at this point has just gone off the deep end. And it's a thing the show manages to do because this guy is an asshole. But as the thing goes on, you realize this guy was not always an asshole. He's kind of become this way with age and bitterness because his wife passed away and pretty much all his friends he grew up with, these other cops, are all dead.
Yeah.
So when he goes in there to confront him about this, the guy's basically had a nervous breakdown. He's about to eat his own gun. So when Gillespie comes back there, he turns the gun on the chief. And the chief manages to talk him down. And when he gets the gun from him, the guy just breaks. He starts sobbing and crying and freaking out, destroying his office, talking about how he doesn't want to be a part of this world anymore and just losing his fucking mind. And the episode ends with Gillespie leaving the office as this guy just sobs like a child in the background in his office.
Jesus. But talking about we will be talking more about this, going through all the episodes that far has. But it is that time of the night again, ladies and gentlemen, burls and squirrels. I don't know what a burl is. If you find out what it is, please don't let me know.
Lives?
Oh, I know what it is.
What the fuck is a burl then? I don't know. But
a donkey.
A donkey. That's a burrow.
Yeah, that's a burrow. A burl is a tree growth.
Oh, a burl. Yeah.
Sorry. So apparently I came up with a real word. Okay. So far, would you like to show yourself and then we move?
Yeah, we'll go through that. All right. Yeah, I got a channel called Farvithian Guard. We do gaming streams, recorded episodes of games. I also do a series called Randomness where I just play an episode of just some game I picked out. We have a retro stuff thing we do where we play older games. I also occasionally do gaming news, but not often. It has to be something really egregious for me to get around to it. I also am an author. My first book is on Amazon, the Farvithian Chronicle. The second book is in the final edit phase while I wait on my artist to get back to me on what her schedule is going to be like. I'm getting the cover art done for the second book. Yeah. So we're close, but it still has to go to get the final edit finished, go to copyright, get formatted, etc.
Oh, lovely. Eclectic, what about you?
I am the Eclectic Goat. I am the Eclectic Goat on both Twitter and YouTube. I recently dropped a video on the history of stop motion, specifically revolving around old monster movies. I threw in some Star Wars there and ending off with Del Toro's Pinocchio. And I'm currently working on my new show, the book is better. Which is comparing. My first episode is going to be comparing the Hunger Games book versus movie.
Oh God, I don't have anything to offer there. I didn't watch or read it.
Jacob.
I have a channel, Jacob Ironside, and I mostly do old movies. But every first Tuesday of the month, I do 2 episodes of the X-Files, so I'll be going over that this Tuesday.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah, and because I forgot, because I always do, you can find me on Twitter at Farvithian. I always forget about that.
Yeah, we're looking forward to this next Twitter fight.
Oh, God.
So we have nothing here going on Potato Heaven because we're taking a 2-week break. That's much needed. And I will see you back in 2 weeks with a new block and ready to go. So be there, be square, be round, triangle. I don't know. Just please show up. I need friends.
Wow.
Okay.
Round, square, potato shaped.
Exactly. Kind of lumpy, bumpy, and a little bit.
Just don't be a rhomboid.
Exactly. So, good night, God bless, and stay nerdy, everyone. Peace out.
Night.